Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of the ITSM crowd. Today we've got another really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about Agile Service Management. So the first thing I'd like to do today is introduce our panel. So if we work from left to right on my screen, Daniel, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Daniel Breston. I'm the old man of the group. I'm the Chief of DevOps Transformation for Ranger 4 and look at all things Agile, Lean, and IT Service Management, how to blend them together to do better, faster, safer.
Thank you very much. And if you watch the ITSM crowd regularly, you will know that Daniel joins us and he's always got something brilliant to contribute. So we're very glad to have him today.
Thank you.
And Helen, if you want to say hello.
Hello, I'm Helen Beale. I also work for Range 4. At Range 4, we're fanatical about making life on Earth fantastic, and DevOps underpins everything that we do.
Thank you very much. And Jayne?
Hi everyone, I'm Jayne Groll. I'm president of ITSM Academy for the past 12 years, and I'm also a co-founder and one of the board members of the DevOps Institute. I'm also the author of the Agile Service Management Guide, so very excited to speak about Agile Service Management today.
Thank you very much. Really excited to have you here. It's always good to have somebody who's been involved with setting up something new, so thank you for joining us. And Suresh, if you want to say hello.
Hello everybody, my name is Suresh GP. I'm the Managing Director of Top Solutions. I've been a practitioner of service management, IT governance, recently being involved on DevOps and Agile thanks to DevOps Institute, because there's a lot of people from service management space who are a little struggling to understand agility in service management. So I think it's a perfect slot today to discuss about what agile service management, People relate to Scrum and other stuff. Let's talk about what is Agile Service Management. So I'm looking forward to chipping in and sharing my perspectives as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And again, you'll recognise Suresh as one of our regulars here on the ITSM crowd, so thank you very much for joining us. My name's Claire Agutter. I'm the lead tutor for ITSM Zone. I'm going to be chairing the panel today, and I'll also be keeping an eye on our Twitter stream. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to put to the panel, if there's anything about Agile Service Management that you'd like to know, just post a tweet and use the hashtag ITSM crowd. We'll pick that up and we'll deal with it as we discuss things in the panel. So the first thing we're going to do today is just start with a definition, because Agile Service Management might be quite a new concept to you. Lots of us have heard of Agile, lots of us have heard of Service Management, but we've maybe not heard the two things put together. So Jayne, if you could kick us off please and just tell us a little bit about what Agile Service Management is and where it's actually come from.
Good, thank you, Claire. So Agile Service Management has evolved out of the need for IT to go faster. And so when we start to look at service management, and I've been in the service management space now for over 12 years, we start to look at the evolution of ITIL and the introduction of ITIL on the operational side, and then we look at the interest in agile software development on the development side. It certainly has become clear that service management processes are still incredibly relevant, but they need to be scaled down to what we call the just enough stage, where we're looking at the Agile Manifesto, where we're valuing individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And it's not that we don't value process. We want process to be scaled to a point where organizations are seeing it as being enabling as opposed to being overly complex and bureaucratic. Since the introduction of DevOps, I think there's been a lot of debate about the relevancy of ITIL and IT service management in a DevOps world. And the truth is that we'll always need those underpinning processes. We'll always need change management. We'll always need incident management and capacity management and demand management. The challenge is, how do we adapt those processes so that they are at the stage of minimum viable process, they're at the stage of being again, meeting a faster, more incremental approach to delivering software regularly to the enterprise. The other part of Agile Service Management is really looking at how we design process. So part of the challenge with designing process in our older ways, it took more of a waterfall approach where we built an end-to-end process and then we introduced one process, a couple of processes a year. And in Agile Service Management, we're looking at taking the same approach to designing process that we take to designing software, where we start to build it incrementally and iteratively, a little bit at a time, so that you can introduce process, the parts of a process that make sense. You can grow up your processes organically, so you can start to look at pieces of different processes and how they integrate, and at the end of the day, hopefully build an integrated approach to service management as opposed to just an end-to-end single process where there's necessarily parts of other processes that are required there as well.
Thank you, Jayne. That's brilliant. So a question to all of you then. How does an organisation know that they need to be more agile in service management? What sort of problems or impediments might they be seeing?
I think a classic thing that I hear from a lot of customers is the way that the pain manifests itself between dev and ops is things like development complaining that operations aren't fast enough to produce environments. And then conversely, operations complaining that development don't consider things like security to be of optimum importance. And for me, and actually I stole this phrase from Jayne, I talk about DevOps being the harmonious polygamous marriage between lean, agile and ITSM. And I differ slightly from Daniel and Jayne in that my background's more a development background, whereas theirs is more an ops background. So that gives us some nice debates. But for me, when people kind of ask, why is ASM important, it's because, for me, the development teams have been doing Agile for quite a long time. To varying degrees of success, we don't meet many companies that are doing Agile perfectly in the development side at all. But for me, ASM is about ops catching up with the thinking, as Jayne just described, that the development teams have been working with for a while. So this ability to do things iteratively and incrementally and fast.
Fantastic, thank you. Suresh, have you got anything to add about maybe what you've seen with the companies that you're working with?
One of the things that we are seeing increasingly and is there is a misconception that the processes are bureaucratic. So whenever people think about, and particularly the development team says, whenever we talk to operations team, they come up with saying that you have to follow the change, the change advisory board. You have to tell me submit a change before a week's time. So they're very rigid about processes. So there's an illusion that process is actually stalling the whole flow. So just getting these guys together and talking a language that the process is needed, but let's not make it too cumbersome. So I think there is a paradigm shift required in order to align the expectations end to end. It's just not about dev and ops, as Helen talked about. As a team, are we able to deliver faster? And are we aligned with the same direction of meeting the business goal? So now we are trying to do a shake and bit about, okay guys, let's rethink about what we are doing. So the kind of design thinking that is coming into picture is all aligned very much into how can we work as an end-to-end value chain. So that is, I think, is very critical from an agile service management perspective.
Fantastic, thank you. One thing that I saw at the DevOps Days conference in London quite recently was one of the presentations, I can't remember who, but said that process is scar tissue that's built up on past failures. And this is something that made Agile Service Management really resonate with me, because a lot of the companies that we work with have these processes that maybe started out okay, but over time they've been amended and adjusted, perhaps because something's gone wrong. And we've got to the point where we've got a process that really doesn't meet our requirements anymore. So applying some agile thinking to that and going back to minimum viable process, working with the processes in sprints, that makes a lot more sense, and it gives us a lot more chance of having a process that will actually meet the requirements of the organisation. And as we all know, if the process isn't up to scratch, then people will just work around it, and people will go off and find their own ways of doing their own things. So, Jayne, you've written the Agile Service Management Guide. Where is that available for people to get, Jayne?
So, and before I get there, Claire, let me just feed on something that Helen said, because I think it's important and it's reflected in the guide. So, Dev has been investing in Agile for 15 years, right? The Agile Manifesto was published in 2001, and since that time, development teams have really tried to become more agile. And I think today, given DevOps, and even looking at the DevOps Institute, where the question is, why is Agile Service Management a part of the DevOps Institute when it's so leaning towards service management, is we have to move away from dev being agile, and we need to make sure that the entire organization is agile. So we've been coining the phrase organizational agility, as opposed to just using agile to be synonymous with Scrum. So part of what we're trying to achieve in Agile Service Management is that balance, right? That balance between a Scrum Master and Agile Service Manager, and really looking at how do we have agility across the entire DevOps spectrum. In answer to your question for the Agile Service Management Guide, certainly it's become a part of the 2 Agile Service Management courses that have been introduced. Agile Service Manager, which anyone who has some experience with the old days of ITIL Service Manager, creates that counterpart to Scrum, where you have somebody who's really kind of facilitating and coaching and leading service management initiatives, and Agile process owners as well. So it is available. It is freely available. It at some point will grow into something bigger, but for today, it is kind of synonymous with the Scrum Guide. So it is available through the DevOps Institute, and it certainly is available as one of the source literatures for the Agile Service Management courses.
Thank
Claire.
you. Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to also mention along all of y'all's discussion that when we were at DevOps Days, I'm not sure if you beat me or I beat you to Twitter, but when Gene Kim went and said IT service management is still relevant and still important in his keynote session, I thought the room was going to erupt. So, you know, it is something that we need to consider. We need to integrate the processes and the power and abilities around service management to the rest of the organization. And you know, examples of that are, how do you make the service desk better, faster, safer? How do you go from idea to realization without a cab at all, which some of our customers are doing now, but not lose governance? So it's that type of thing that I think the blending of Agile and IT service management brings to the picture.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Daniel, and that kind of leads me to another question, I guess, which would be, for the people who are watching who are maybe from ITIL enterprises rather than DevOps enterprises, what would Agile Service Management mean for them? You know, from my experience, I know it's not a case of throwing away everything that they've already done, but how would Agile Service Management and ITIL work together?
No, I'll probably pick this up quickly, is that when actually Agile Service Manager got rolled out, because as service management professionals, we always thought Agile was for development. Okay? That's how things, because they were already kind of embracing that part of it. And in fact, if you look at when this Agile Service Management came in, it came a little earlier than ITIL Practitioner. So if you look at ITIL Practitioner of that instance, it's actually taking a lot of these aspects from Agile, right, and from Agile Manifesto, looking at all of these principles. It's all available as part of Agile Service Management. So if I was doing something on ITIL from previous days, one of the things I would ask as a question to explore, because the landscape is changing, what is it required from my end to change to catch up with the new change of moving faster, safer, and deliver much value. So if you start questioning about it, you want to cling on to some kind of framework or a methodology. So that's where people do not know how to go about doing it. So Agile Service Management actually unearths very lucidly someone who's taking the journey from his old ways to taking small baby steps to move into the Agile Service Management. So it's a gradual transformation of an individual, of his way of thinking and process before he gets to the next step. So I love the aspect of making him understand, comprehend, and then consume before just digesting completely the whole book of be it any book that you talk about. So I think there's a lot of value. We can slowly transform someone moving from the old ways to the new ways of working.
Well, and if I could jump in just real fast on that, because I think, Suresh, you're exactly right on point. Agile Service Management doesn't redefine the processes. So I think books like ITIL, frameworks like ITIL or other service management frameworks do a good job of that. And so there's no reason to redefine any of those processes. What Agile Service Management is doing is modernizing the approach to those. So we still need change management, we still need release management, and whether you're officially doing a DevOps initiative or you're just looking to improve your current service management program, it really is just trying to make your service management program faster in whatever need that you need it to be faster. Perhaps instead of using the words faster, we go less bureaucratic, less complex, and really looking at adapting to modern requirements. So again, it isn't replacing or reinventing anything that's been included in ITIL or other frameworks. There's nothing in 2,000 pages of ITIL that says make your processes bureaucratic and complex. But unfortunately, as organizations start to implement it, it's very easy to head off in that direction. And so taking continual improvement and starting to look at ways to adapt that, to minimize that so you have all of the good controls without being too controlling, I think is a key aspect of Agile Service Management.
Yeah, I agree with that. It starts the discussion. I mean, the two books out of the 5 that are most not read are Service Strategy and Continual Service Improvement. And Agile IT Service Management allows you to get people into a room and have an active discussion as to why are we doing something, what do we accomplish by doing that certain thing, and how can we, over time, change it to facilitate the use of the new automation that's coming out, such that the impact to the organization is, getting them what they need at the right place at the right time, or other than people, the tool that every organization relies upon now day to day to stay alive, which is technology.
And I noticed that change management came up a couple of times, which I know is a particularly favourite subject of Daniel's. Daniel, do you want to talk about one of our customers and their approach to change, the Danish people I'm talking about? I think you probably realise.
It was interesting to have a group of architects, web engineers, developers, IT service management people, senior PMs, and managers all in a room describe how they went from the time some bright spark has an idea until that idea goes live. And they drew it all out on a whiteboard. And I kept waiting for the change approval board to come into play. And it never came, so I asked. And they looked at us and said, we got rid of it. We didn't replace governance. We didn't replace what needed to be done. But because we were now using automation better, or because we now had a trust in how test occurred, the customers, the internal customers of what we do, trust us to be able to go live without a cap. And when they went and expressed that to their internal auditors went, well, we didn't ask you to create a meeting to ask everybody to come and do this. We're happy to do that. If you guys are happy, we're happy. So that just blew me away.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear that the auditors were happy, because quite often I think we feel like we have to have a paper trail, we have to do these things, whereas we should be looking at the first principle of, well, what's this process supposed to do? And if it can do that on a whiteboard without having a meeting, then that's absolutely fine, and it meets the process objective and it meets the business need. So if people are watching and they are intrigued by the concept of Agile Service Management, as I'm sure everybody is, what are a few kind of key concepts that we can give to people in the short time that we've got? What sort of things are covered as part of Agile Service Management?
If you don't mind, let me start on that, because I think there's an important aspect of Agile Service Management that we're sort of missing, particularly in the education space, and that's that it teaches you as much Scrum as you would get in a Scrum Master class. So Agile Service Management really looks at Scrum and Agile from both the product and the process perspective, because if we're going to engage Dev and Ops in understanding the need for Agile service management, and perhaps that's something that has been neglected in the past, the dev relationship to service management, then we need to understand how developers are developing and how they're using Agile concepts. And of course, developers need to understand how we can build and have input into service management processes. So from an educational perspective, you actually get both. You actually get Scrum from its purest intent, which is software development, and then how we can apply those same concepts to the design and improvement of service management processes.
It's a really important point, actually, Jayne, and what I'm seeing with our customers is we have loads of people that are setting up cloud teams, cloud innovation teams, and people that are helping, teams of people that are helping them migrate apps to the cloud, and they tend to be made up of ops people and service desk people, and they come to us and they ask for Agile coaching, like they're talking about development coaching. We look at them and we think about what they're doing, and actually Agile service management is what they're really asking for, and they're really enjoying the courses.
That's right.
And they're enjoying the concept that we're not stealing something and just adding it as a marketing word. We're actually using material from, the people that wrote Scrum and the people that wrote the service management processes, and blending them together in such a way that they get a very good understanding in Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and other, lean type stuff with IT service management in such a way that they can, take it away as a guide, up to the metrics that make sense, and to roles and responsibilities for individuals. I mean, it's a very intense discussion that you're able to have when you get back to work.
What we have seen in a lot of our engagements, what we do is we conduct brown bag sessions. Now, in these brown bag sessions, what we do is we ask people who are specialized in their own fields to come and share their experience. So anything new coming into the organization first comes as part of a teaser. So someone comes there and talks about it. The key objective is you need to talk in confidence language. You're not going to use jargon. You're going to actually do how this will work. So when they start doing that, then they come up with an open mind and see how this has been implemented into this workplace. So then they get excited and curious. One of the advantages you instigate in some of these discussions is get them curious. Once you start getting them curious, they obviously will fall a trap to this. So that's the intent. You cannot push things because that is never going to be taken. But you just give them a show of flavor and get them excited about it, curious about it. Guess what? They're going to be the change agents for the next time. So this has worked in a lot of my engagements, and that's the best way to get in people. We are talking about collaboration, communication. How does it happen? People need to get inspired, and there's different ways to make people inspired. And one size doesn't fit all. So get people into a room, and they have to necessarily listen to someone who is talking about a different theme or a language, because that's the whole point, to get everybody onto the same page. Otherwise, people don't, they stick to their own way of working. Okay, I'm going to do it in development. Anything about Agile, Scrum, sprints, I will work. Something on service management? No, I don't want to work on it. How do you break the ice? That might be a choice.
Yeah, I think that's very true. So we're talking about Agile, we're talking about IT service management. Does an organisation have to be doing Agile and Scrum, and do they have to be doing IT service management to get benefit from this? Or is this something that we can bring into a fairly immature environment?
I would think that if an organization were starting today and looking at DevOps and looking at building their service management program, personally, I would love to see them start with minimum viable process, because it's easier to build on top of a minimum viable process than it is to take an existing process and scale it back. So in a perfect world, you would have organizations that are just starting to learn about these concepts, because they would be curious, as Suresh said, they would be curious about service management, and they would be curious about frameworks like ITIL, but they would also take a design approach that I think is much more meaningful to today's IT environment than perhaps the IT environment of 10 years ago or beyond. We have to remember that frameworks like ITIL, because of their relationship with the publication cycle, are very, very difficult to update. And so, again, the core information is very, very relevant, but wouldn't it be great to kind of have an organization starting to really explore both and then add in agile software development so that we're engaging the developers right from the start? To me, that would be a perfect situation. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations have already started down that path, and it's still relevant to them, but a new organization would really be prime.
I can share my experience of a small startup which is not much matured into service management. They're a hardcore software development company, right? And one of the things, and there's an infra team across. So one of the things we did is just to focus on Agile Manifesto. What we did was we looked at Agile Manifesto's 4 key things, and we gave use cases. For example, there is, let's take an example of the aspect of collaboration, customer collaboration as opposed to contract negotiation, right? So what we did was a typical project comes in, you have a scope, and then it gets delivered. And suddenly the customer comes in and asks for a new requirement that's not part of the scope. So guess what? You raise a flag, raise a change request. So this seeks to be perfectly into the condition of alignment of your process, because anything outside the scope of the system, raise a flag. But guess what? I'm saying just hold on, okay? Just see what is he asking for. Why is he asking for? And can you bring about in the triple constraint of quality, cost, timeline, and say, we definitely want to help you, but with this kind of scheme of things, this is what it takes. You tell us how to make the decision. So that's a much more collaborative way of working. I'm right. This is against the system. You're done and go. So the interaction, the relationships, all are phenomenally important to bring this. So Agile Manifesto is like a Bible for me. If you just look at the principles and just rationalize why this has come into practice, you make a lot of sense. And this could be applied in every aspect of your workplace, even in your life. So I think that's probably my starting point to talk about Agile Service Management.
I think for bigger companies, just to follow on from that, if you're looking at, you're going to cloud, or you're starting to get more and more managed services or outsourcing some of the things that you do, Agile Service Management allows you to create some processes that make sense, but based upon the knowledge and way that you work today, rather quickly because of that collaboration and communication. So you don't over-egg it, you over time improve it. And that really does drive service integration and the creation of a service catalog to customers.
Daniel, you got us all quiet.
I'm sorry. So we're kind of coming up to the end of our time, so I did just want to focus in a little bit on one point which we've mentioned, which is the Agile Service Management training course that's available. So we're all offering the training. We were really excited to add it to our portfolio, but if you could share, I guess, what people can learn on the training course and who the course is actually suitable for as well. I think that'd be a brilliant way for us to wrap up.
Oh, my boss went and put me into this course that had 4 people that were ops and IT service management related and 4 people that were all dev related. Tapped me on the shoulder and went, good luck. And it turned out to be a great course, because the interactions that occurred, even though they were from different organizations, was amazing, because they both realized that they both wanted the same thing and had never discussed it. So that would be my takeaway, is that I cannot underestimate what Suresh and others have said. This is a collaboration and communication vehicle.
I would agree, Daniel. I mean, I think, speaking from kind of it's a little bit of my brainchild. So I have a little bit of a parental relationship to it, but I think the motivation behind it was to get dev and ops engaging. You know, starting to share some common practices, starting to cross-pollinate their practices, and I think most importantly, starting to understand what it means to be agile before they start doing agile. And I think that's a big part of the conversation. So I would feed on to what you just said, which is I would encourage kind of both sides to participate, because this is not service management purely from ops. This is, again, it's as much Scrum as you would get in a Scrum Master class. So coming out of the Agile Service Manager class, you are, if you're dev, a Scrum Master, even though not certified as such. And on the ops side, you're an Agile Service Manager, and now you have counterparts.
Yeah.
I think I would agree.
Sorry, I think for me, one of the main audiences perhaps for this course is for people who've had traditional service management training, because you learn a lot of good things, but then sometimes you sit there and think, well, what's my first step? And Agile Service Management, we've got some people who are ITIL experts taking the course, and the feedback that we have from them is it's kind of, I learned all this amazing material on my ITIL courses, but then this is helping me actually apply it in a sensible way within the organisation, and that's been a real benefit that we've seen with our customers.
Yeah, I was just trying to add with what Jayne was saying. You know, I have had classes where people have done DevOps course, and they are from dev background, and what they wanted was they wanted to look at the Agile Service Manager, primarily because they want to understand what operations we're thinking about. Because in order to command respect, when you are in, let's say in dev, and you want to command respect with operations, you have to understand how they work. And typically in the old side of working, they're all, you know, restricted to the one way of working. So once you get into that mode, they were interested to look at the other side's quadrant, which I think is important to make that fit, that this dev understands ops better, vice versa, ops understand dev better. So in my opinion, it's called shared pain, shared gain. You know? Think about someone from the dev sitting on a 3 o'clock call in the morning, and they say, oh my God, this is difficult, then he writes a better code. So I would say that you make sure that you have shared pain and shared gain. So that has to be fair enough for both of these people to enjoy the whole benefits, right?
I think shared pain is, yeah, something many of us can sympathise with based on our careers today. So we're out of time now. I'd like to say thank you so much to all of the panel for joining us. I think that's been a really good discussion. If you want more information about Agile Service Management, like Jayne said, there is the Agile Service Management Guide, and that's available via the DevOps Institute. So you can have a look at their website, and there's more information about the work that they're doing there as well. So thank you to those of you that are watching us live, and thank you very much to the panel, and we will see you on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.